This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Tim Surber.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Good Neighbors Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Surber. And today I've got a guest sitting on the call with me who's a good friend and somebody that I'm very excited to have on the show. He's a Marine fighter, fighter pilot, a former Air National Guard officer, a small business owner, a husband and a dad of four, and a state representative. And now he's really bored, so now he's going to run for the Indiana's 4th Congressional District, and he's going to ask the Indiana voters to send him to Washington. So everybody, please let me introduce you to Craig Haggard. How you doing, Craig?
I'm doing great. Just as you can see, I'm in my car. I've been on the road all day campaigning. After this, I'm off to 2 more meetings, so doing great. Appreciate you having me on.
Wow. Well, thanks for sitting down with us today. You know, I always tell folks this podcast is about Morgan County and the good neighbors who make it what it is. And you've been one of those neighbors for a long time. But before we dive in, you know, how's Brooke and you and the family doing?
You know, the family's doing great. My wife has been a saint through this because I have been gone a lot. And if I want to have dinner with my wife, I actually have to get with my scheduler and put it in a schedule to make sure that, I'm able to see her. And so they're doing good. I think that everybody will be glad when May 5th is here and over with.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that, and I think what's important is you're giving a lot to run for this, and your family is one who a lot of time takes consequences, right? They don't get to see as much. You probably are missing a lot of things. I know your wife performs at times, so I know it's hard on the family, and I thank you for 2 things: your service. Thank you for that, and thank you for your service wanting to go to Washington D.C. and represent the Indiana 4th District. For the listeners who haven't met you yet, give us a short version. Who is Craig Haggard? Where do you call home? Where, what shaped you into the man sitting today on this call?
Well, I was raised in Waverly, Indiana, so just up the road from you, and which is Morgan County. So I've always lived in the 4th. I went to Mooresville High School, went to Hanover College. Always wanted to be a fighter pilot as a kid. So kind of everything in my life, what I didn't do, grades, trying not to get in trouble, kind of shaped, or at least, guided my path. And I joined the Marine Corps Officer Program, PLC Air Program. I was guaranteed an air contract, did all the testing, and started going to Quantico in the summers. Was graduated and was commissioned as Second Lieutenant in the Marine Corps in 1991, and went and did my infantry training, which all Marine officers do prior to your MOS school, and went to flight school. Graduated number 1 out of primary flight training in Corpus Christi, Texas, and then was selected to fly jets and completed that and did my carrier qualifications. I got my naval aviator wings and was selected to fly Aviate B Harrier jump jets, and went to Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point and took my training in the Harrier. And then my first fleet squadron, VMA 223, which is the last squadron in the Marine Corps, the last Harrier squadron still available. And actually it's sundowning in the first week of June, so we're all going down for a week-long celebration of the closing of that squadron. And from there I did combat operations around the world, mostly off of ships. The USS Kearsarge is the last ship I deployed off of, and came back, and then I was honorably discharged in 2000 and came back to Indiana, but I still wanted to serve. And I took an active duty commission in the Air Force for the Air National Guard and flew F-16s out of Terre Haute. And I was commander of the air-to-ground range at Camp Atterbury. Did that for about 11 years, I guess. And, well, a little bit more than that, but I retired as a lieutenant colonel in 2013. And during that time, like you mentioned, we have a family. I'm a grandpa now, and actually did humanitarian missions for about 11 years, led folks down to Central Mexico, and had a construction business on the side. So did a little bit of everything.
Yeah, you definitely are involved in a lot of things, got a lot of experience, background. It's good that you got an entrepreneurship background also, because that's where we're all small business is a lot of that, and it's good to have somebody that will have our backs in Washington, D.C. on those type of things. Now, you spent 22 years in the military, 11 years in active duty Marine Corps, and 11 years more flying F-16s for the Air National Guard, right?
Yeah, I was active duty in the Guard, so
Okay.
you have a bunch of different ways you can serve, but I was an actual active duty Air Force guy flying for the Guard. It's called an AGR, Active Guard Reserve,
Okay.
and did that. And then when I got out, I actually worked for the NRA after that for a number of years for the non-for-profit side. And I'm not with them anymore, but I sit on the National Board of Directors, elected to that national position about 2 years ago.
You know, one thing I've always admired when people are in the military and stay in, you know, it builds a lot of character in that person and gives them a lot of, I think it changes a lot of people, gives them the ability to believe they can do things that maybe they never thought possible. But, you know, what's the story from those years that still sticks with you and helps shape how you lead today?
You know, you go in and they try to teach you your basic leadership skills and all those sort of things, and you're taught those foundational beliefs. And you know, we even have a required reading list. One was, you know, Sun Tzu, The Art of War, and then a bunch of different other books and lessons learned. Soldier's Load, The Mobility of a Nation, Forgotten Soldier by Guy. I still remember those books that we read.
Yeah.
But then we put those into. We saw, you know, our first leaders kind of also helped shape us to see how they led. My first commanding officer was Colonel Wesley Fox, who had spent 43 years in the Marine Corps. He was a first sergeant up to Korea. In Vietnam, he won the Congressional Medal of Honor as a first lieutenant, and then we were at his retirement ceremony as our last commanding officer after 43 years. And from leaders like that, and then staff sergeants and the compassionate leaders and the tough leaders kind of shaped kind of how I started to lead. And I'll tell you, in the beginning, I'm sure I screwed up things, and you started to learn lessons, you know, when you did things the wrong way. And I used to say that you had those individuals that led by their shoulder. And what I mean is, you say, well, I got this rank, listen to me. But you started to find out quickly that Marines did what they had to do because of the rank, but then you had the different ones that wanted to follow you because of who you were. And I have one of the important lessons I learned as far as respect from the troops, and I tell this story. It was sort of funny. It's how I had one of my screw ups one time, but really learned a valuable lesson from that. We in the Harrier, of course, we hovered, and doing conventional landings were actually an emergency procedure because it wasn't really made to do that. But we had to do it so many times a month if we had an engine fire anyway, for reasons. And we were at Cherry Point, and people don't understand. In the older aircraft, we had no. I sound like the old guy back in my day when we flew, but we had no computer aided stuff. It was all seat of the pants flying. We had a throttle, a nozzle lever. We called it, just a mechanical, hydraulically actuated that moved the nozzles, and it was all by feel. There was no computer aid. So your hands are moving back and forth in the cockpit, and you would land, and you would actually go to idle. You'd take your nozzles, you put it forward, you bring the power up to slow down, you bring the power back, nozzles back aft again, put the power up, and that was kind of a sequence. And as I'm rolling out on the runway at Cherry Point, you actually had a big mat in the center, and then you actually did an offset to take off again. A side note, it was an alternate space shuttle landing site, just as a side little fact there. But anyway, so I was landing out, and I was doing back and forth with the nozzles, and instead of pulling the nozzles back, I pulled the throttle and shut the airplane down. I was on the runway, but all of a sudden you heard that the engine spooling down. I'm like, oh no, what did I do? And I'm a young first lieutenant at the time, and then I roll off into the center mat, and my nozzles are down, so I know I can't. So the first thing in your head is like, how can I get out of this without anybody knowing I did it? But I couldn't start the jet again because the nozzles were down. You're not supposed to. And I'm sitting there, and tower comes over the radio. Hey, Shank, I think was our call sign. Shank 1-2, are you okay? Oh no, I'm fine. Just get back with you in a second. And so I'm still, my wheels are turning. I'm like, oh, there's no way. And so finally I said, hey, tower, going to switch to ground. I'm going to need a tow. Are you all right? Emergency? No, I'm good. Just, leave me alone. I'm switching to ground. And I call base. Hey, I need a tow. Anything wrong? I'm like, no, guys, just tow me back in. And so when I got towed in, and we had to fill out a maintenance book that said what you did, and if the aircraft was up or down, so if it was broken. And I put that it was good to go. And in the remark session, I said, I was an idiot. I shut down my plane on landing. And anyway, and then I threw the book in, and about an hour later, the maintenance officer called me back in. And I thought, oh, I'm going to get chewed out now. This young guy screwed up, and the head warrant officer for the maintenance was there, and they both shook my hand. I thought, okay, is this some sort of joke? And they said, listen, we know this has probably happened before, but if you had written that the engine just shut down, we would have had to pull the engine. That would have been out of service for a week or two. We would have had to do all these tests, and you were just honest about it. And so that was a huge lesson to me. And at that point, all the maintenance guys, the enlisted guys, I was like this mini hero of pilots because I was honest and said when I screwed up. And I learned a lesson in life to just admit when you're wrong, admit when you screw up. I don't know. That was just, anyway, as far as lessons, that was a huge lesson for me on something stupid I did. And thank goodness it was nothing that, nobody was in danger. But it was a lot of lessons like that where you realize just tell the truth, be honest, say when you screwed up and learn from it, and then brief the other guys on why you screwed up. And that was one of the important lessons in life, along with when I went to POW training. One of the things they taught us there is how you get through interrogations when you're beaten, starved, tortured, and all that kind of stuff is to tell, and this may surprise people, under interrogation, the best way to go through it is to tell the truth. Now, not tell the truth on, the secret stuff they want to know,
Right.
But you can find something like an OCS or whatever, and you'll just talk. And it was shown in Iraq and other places that the guys that did this, they just wrote. They just, hey, I'm getting information. It was worthless information. But the lesson it taught me is, because they said, whether you're tired, beaten, tortured, incoherent, you always remember the truth. And once again, that was another lesson saying, hey, just be honest, and you can lay your head down at night and not have to worry about what you said.
Yeah. And
So a couple of lessons from the military.
Yeah, well, that's huge, taken into Washington, D.C., right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I know throughout your life you have lived with that. So lived by that. So, I love hearing these stories. I think I'm thinking seriously of doing a military type of podcast so I can just bring on military personnel and talk about it. And I think it would be a neat thing to do. But you've done a lot of things, but you've never slowed down. What pulled you to keep just building things instead of just staying in one lane?
Well, I have to say my father is very similar. He's 83 and still going into the company and still working and doing things he shouldn't do at his age. And I think I may end up being a lot like that. But, I always wanted to serve. There was a time between when I retired and I was working for NRA and I was raising money and speaking about the Second Amendment. I felt like I was still, fighting for the Constitution and things. And when I got out of that, doing the program manager stuff and even some of the side businesses, that was great. But I kind of felt there was something missing. And when I was asked to run for state rep my first time, I thought this is a way to get back in and serve and be part of the process and just a continuation of that life service. And now I think instead of going in young, I think it's great having all this experience and not necessarily procedural things like that, but to continue to fight for people around me. I've been blessed to be able to be in the position I'm in, to be able to have done the things I've done and have that experience. And I think that needs to be used to continue to serve. I feel that pull to serve in my 4 years in the State House, although frustrating at times. One of my biggest things that I've really enjoyed is my constituent services, by being able to help those outside of legislation, but being able to help those in the community that have problems, real problems that it's hard for them to get solved. But because I have this silly title of state rep, people pick up your phone calls or who to call and you're able to help folks. And I don't know, I guess I'm drawn to that for whatever reason.
Yeah. You have a servitude gift really also, and that's wonderful. And you've lived in Mooresville most of your life, and you raised
Mm-hmm.
4 kids there, and you're with your wife Brooke, and you're the I think are you still serving as the church administrator on the church administrative board?
No, I did that for about 10 years, and I was also the head trustee for about 3 years. And not to get on the religious side, but I was raised in the Methodist Church, and as a lot of people know, they kind of split. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't really a fan of the direction of our church. So my wife and I actually went to a tremendous amount of churches in different denominations. And so we actually found a new home down in Martinsville at the Baptist Tabernacle Church down there. And,
Yeah.
so now I guess I'm Baptist, but, and I still dance, but, actually I don't. My wife actually wants me to go dancing more. I'm just, but now we found a great home there. Wonderful people.
You know, and for the folks of Morgan County that may or may not know you, but what makes this part of Indiana worth fighting for you?
Well, you know, in the past few weeks, and I kind of wrapped up, my goal was, I've been doing this for about 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And I said to my folks, it was first exploratory. One of the biggest things I wanted to do was make sure I knew the district. And I've spent 2.5 years visiting not only all the big places, but I've visited almost every town councils of every small town in Indiana. And I've discovered towns I did not know existed.
Yeah.
You know, towns of 300, 400, 500. And I actually found my favorite town council president in Jamestown, Indiana, which I never knew existed, which is in Boone County. And the town council president there is she's an elderly lady. Her name's Carol, but she goes by Cookie. And she's the sweetest lady in the world. And, you know, you want to hug her the first, 30 seconds you talk to her, even though, that might be inappropriate. So I didn't. But she's just the people in all these small towns, like bigger than Waverly, but you meet them, and all these individuals, they don't have enough money for their towns. They don't really get paid a lot to do this, but you can tell every one of them really care about their community. And I just came from, and I'm going to screw up the name, I think it was Pinewood, which is in Warren County. And I met the town council president there, and she was so proud of her town, telling me about, they still to this day give every kid a little Christmas gift, at Christmas time, and how, one of the first football games, part of the paid series pre-NFL, actually existed in the town, and their football team was the Villagers. They have a little museum, and they're so proud of these areas, and they love their community. And these are the folks, that's the majority of the Fourth. It's small town, it's rural America, where you could break down and somebody eventually stops to help you out. And I think that a lot of these, we're called the flyover states, but I'll take the flyover states in the Midwest and the people that I grew up with any day. And those are the people that I think are forgotten because we're not the East, the West Coast, or not even in the bigger cities in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And I think they're worth fighting for because they tend to get ignored.
I'll agree with you on that. And I think that is very important. And it would be nice to really go back to the small town attitude of people, because, it's something, like you said, you break down, somebody's going to help you. It's a good feeling. We've been here for, I was born and raised in Lafayette, and we've lived down here in Morgan County now for over 30 years. And it really, what attracted us was the way families were important to the area. And we really enjoyed that. And talking about families, when you decided to make this run, I think it's August of 2025, you decided not to go for re-election for your House seat in Indiana. What conversations did you have with Brooke and your kids before you made the call?
I mean, this is one where I thought it was very important. I actually started asking other congressmen and people, how many days are there? I Googled it, and you're in DC on average 155 days out of the year.
Wow.
And so, my kids are grown. I still make it a point, the ones that are still in the state, not every Sunday, but most Sundays we'll make sure we still have a dinner together, that we still have movie night. We're going, actually this Sunday, we're going to take a little break and actually go to the Japanese Fest downtown, or the festival. And I think that family's so important. I still, have breakfast with my mom and dad on occasion. I still go to their house. They live close by. And so that was important to me, to let them know that I'm going to still schedule those times, but I still want to serve. Because I think, just like the service, your family are the ones that people forget, that their sacrifice is probably more than yours, because you're working, and they're the ones that are waiting for you, or take the arrows when arrows should only come to me. They go to your family. And so we had a lot of conversations, talked to my mom. I said, they might get nasty. And we've already seen in the past week or two the other side being a little nasty. But I've never run a negative campaign. I didn't then. I'm not going to now. I can honestly say I'm the only one in this campaign that hasn't been negative, and I'm not going to, because I don't think tearing down someone means you're great.
Yeah.
So that's great. That person's horrible, but how does that make you look good? So I just want to concentrate on what I can do, what I can offer, what I want to do, and let them choose that versus the nastiness. And I think when I've seen that negativity, that's what people don't like in DC. That's
Right.
what people want to change. And I just think that's the wrong way to go about it.
Well, and good segue into your slogan. Give us your slogan that you have.
I don't know. Remind me what my slogan is.
Yeah,
I don't know.
The one on your side is Washington serves itself. Craig
Oh,
wants
yeah.
to serve
I'm
you.
to serve you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I've actually had a few slogans out there,
Yeah.
ready to continue to serve and this thing. But and those, we try to keep that theme that I say nobody in DC votes for you. Only people back home. And that's who you need to serve.
Right.
And it's not the special interest. And it's not, you hear, you see people, and I've had people say, oh, you're going to get out there and you're going to change. You're going to be this horrible person. And I'll say to them, I understand why you say that. But I've never done that. I stayed true to who I am in the state house. I voted against the caucus when I thought it was unconstitutional. I have gone the opposite way, and I have a record of doing that. And I don't want to be a disruptive candidate. I want to be somebody who governs, but also somebody who serves all sides, not just my side, but the other side. Because people have to remember that the beautiful thing about our country is that you can disagree, you can be crazy and wacko or whatever, but as long as you're not hurting anybody, breaking the law, that's why this country is great, because you can do that without being thrown in jail or hung in the town square. And we need to celebrate that. And so.
You're right about that. I remember the days of Democrat Republicans getting along, working together. Ronald Reagan was a great example of that, and probably the master of it, of anybody I've seen to be able to pull two people together, parties. But yeah, and I think that's important for the families to know that you're there. You will do what you need to. You will fight for the people of your district, and I know that for a fact. And you definitely have Lisa's and my support. My wife just wrote a rebuttal to somebody in the paper just this weekend or this Thursday. And, we've got to know you and Brooke and have a lot of respect for you, and know you will come or go to Washington and really fight for us. So when you talk about issues like border security and protecting farmland from foreign ownership and the Second Amendment, standing up to the Chinese Communist Party, of everything on your plate, what's the one issue you'd plant your flag on, as the thing that you absolutely have to move the needle on when you get to DC?
Well, people ask you, what's your biggest threat to the country? And, and in your mind, you think of China, North Korea, Russia, border security, and all those things are important, and they're definite threats. And also we can deal with more than one thing at one time. But I think our biggest threat is ourselves. And I say that because both parties, we built this $39 trillion debt. And every great society or every society in history has fallen for economic reasons, driven by war, famine, whatever. And all those other things are important and they're threats, but none of it matters if we fail as a country. Yeah. And so I think the spending, the wasteful spending, the unconstitutional organizations that we spend billions and billions of dollars on, we need to streamline that, because government just keeps growing and growing and growing. Taxes keep going more and more and more. And I think the spending needs to be under control. We need to just make a smaller government. And we have to tackle that. I mean, I'm a huge believer in the balanced budget amendment. I think we need that, because I don't, if you really want to celebrate, the only president that I can think of that balanced the budget in my lifetime, it's Bill Clinton. And a lot of Republicans don't like to hear that. Now, having said that, to your point, he was working with Newt Gingrich, who's a Republican, who was Speaker of the House, and they worked together, much like Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill. But we need to get back to that, fight each other, during the campaign. That's fine. But when you get there, do what's best for the Americans. Remember, you took an oath to the Constitution, not a party, and quit wishing the government or the country fails if your guy's not in charge of the White House. And that goes on both sides. And I see that. And I think that's a little treasonous. And it seems like people just continue to campaign during their 2 years, at least for a House member, 2 years instead of, okay, campaign's over. Let's get to work together and do the right stuff. Because I can tell you most of my Democrats in the State House really do want most of the same stuff. So I know that, and I know there are good folks there. You always see the crazies on TV, but I know that, so prove it.
Yeah.
When the election's over, let's work together and get what, get at least what we can agree on done for the country, and quit campaigning until the next campaign.
Well, and just accept who the leaders are on both sides and work together. I don't understand it. That's a big, Lisa and I have a lot of frustration with that and not happy about it, but that's just the way things are. But we hope it changes, and sending people like you there will help make that happen. And we've gone over a little bit, so I'm just one last question for you. The fourth stretches from Martinsville up past Lafayette, a lot of ground, a lot of communities there. If you had 30 seconds to look someone in the eye who's never met you and tell you why they should trust you with their vote, what would you say?
I would say I have a proven life of service, a proven from my military service to my humanitarian service to my family, successful kids, which I think that always says something about the parents, that I have taken the time to learn the district, get to know the district, that I answer every phone call. I've given my personal number out to 7,000 people, and I answer all of them, even the screaming calls, and say to them, listen, you have to do more than just go to Washington and push a button and then go to your nice dinners. You actually need someone who will be responsive, who is available, who will actually fight for you and not just go there. And there's a difference between just showing up, sitting down and pushing a button and someone who fights for the people in their district. And you can't fight for them if you don't know your people, you're not accessible, and you don't really know the area. And I think I have a history of that. And I think that is the big difference. What's the big difference? Is I think you need somebody who listens, knows people, and who fight for them, and not just show up every 2 years during an election and then push a button when you're in DC. So that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, and I can say testimony to that. You do answer your phone. You do get back to people, because you and I have had discussions on the phone, even texting. So I think it will be cool if I can do that while you're in Washington, D.C. So I know you will do it. So it's good to have a voice there that we can talk to and have somebody there supporting us. And before I let you go, everybody, Haggard for Congress is his website. Craig, before we go, where can folks find you, follow your campaign, and get involved if they want to help? I know it's
just
close.
like you said, go to haggardforcongress.com and you can put your information there, and it has my history and ask questions. And if you really want to talk to me, just let us know on the website, and I'll get back with you.
Well, I appreciate your time, Craig. It's taken a little bit longer than I told you, but well worth it. And I'm looking forward to seeing you get to Washington, D.C. and definitely be the guy that's out there fighting for us in Morgan County. So thanks a lot. You have a great, safe trip. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks. Take care.
We'll see you.
See you, brother.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnpmorgancounty.com. That's gnpmorgancounty.com or call 317-743-2058.